Good afternoon, everyone. If we could have you just silence your phones, I know a few of you are still trying to make it to your seats. We can go ahead and get started. I think you'll be very excited at what we have today. I'm very excited. I've read the book and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you for being here today, and we'll talk more soon.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us at today's program. My name is Amy Sapika, and I am the Detroit Director for the American Jewish Committee, AJC. And I want to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to the Zeckelman Holocaust Center for partnering with AJC to bring you the remarkable story that you're about to hear. AJC is the global Jewish advocacy organization with a mission to ensure that Jewish communities are safe and thriving throughout the world and that Israel's place in the world is secure. AJC works with leaders across society to support Israel and combat surging anti-Semitism. And we have 25 offices here in the United States and 15 throughout the world, including on every continent. Today's event is a perfect example of the impact created by AJC's global network. Earlier this year, I heard from my colleague, Arjun Hadass, who is AJC's representative in New Delhi, which is part of AJC's Asia Pacific Institute. He had attended the book launch for this book, A Rescue in Vienna, which was held at the Austrian Embassy in India. And he let me know that the book's author, Vinay Gupta, lived here in Michigan and that I should be in touch. So I connected with him so that we could shine a light on this extraordinary and little-known story. At the same time, Mr. Hadass is continuing to work to have Kundanlal, Vinay's grandfather, recognized among the righteous at Yad Vashem, and if this is successful, he will be the first Indian recognized at Yad Vashem. So we hope he will receive that honor. When I spoke to Mr. Gupta, I learned that he had conducted much of his research here at the Zeckelman Holocaust Library, and so all the threads, AJC's global reach, local connections, and the Holocaust Center came together to make today possible. Thank you, Vinay, for publishing this important piece of history. At a moment when Jewish communities are facing rising anti-Semitism, stories like this remind us that courageous and compassionate allies can be found across the world. Now, much of AJC's work centers on building meaningful relationships between the Jewish community and other religious, ethnic, and international leaders. To that end, I would like to thank and acknowledge the Indian and Hindu leaders in attendance today, and also our legislative representatives that are here today. We appreciate and value your partnership and friendship. Now it is my honor to welcome Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Pal, Consul of Press, Information, and Culture, joining us from the Indian Consulate in Chicago. The Indian Consulate in Chicago has been a steadfast supporter of AJC's work both in Detroit and Chicago, and we are truly grateful for your presence here today.
Thank you, Amy. Shalom, namaste, good afternoon. Distinguished representatives of the Zeckelman Holocaust Center and American Jewish community, members of the Jewish and Indian community, dear friends. It's an honor to join you this afternoon for this special program around Mr. Vinay Gupta's book, A Rescue in Vienna, and the remarkable story of his grandfather, Sri Kundanlal. The Holocaust is one of the history's darkest chapters. Remembering it is a moral duty so that anti-Semitism, hatred, and dehumanization of any people are never accepted again. In that time of darkness, Mr. Kundanlal's actions shine as a quiet light. From his home in Punjab, far from Europe, he chose to offer work, shelter, and hope to Jewish families fleeing the Nazis. He sought no recognition. He simply did what his conscience demanded. His story reflects India's civilizational ethos of Vasudev Kutumbakam, meaning the world is one family, and our long tradition of offering refuge, including to Jewish communities who lived in India for centuries without any anti-Semitism, which is seen elsewhere. As AJC and partners work for his recognition, we are reminded that ordinary individuals can show extraordinary moral courage. May this book travel widely and inspire all of us to stand firmly against hatred in our times. Thank you, and I wish all the very best to Mr. Vinay Gupta. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here, especially since, as Amy said, my journey to find all this research and do all the data started right here, actually upstairs in the library. It was in December, I think in 2014, where I ended up for the first time visiting on our way from Ann Arbor, which is where we live, to Somerset Mall, right? That's the, and this happened to be here, and my wife, Jyoti, and I, we walked upstairs, and the librarian at that time, Fega Weiss, was, the library was empty, which was great, because I had her undivided attention, and she was just exceptional in terms of, she'd call me up, she'd say, well, I found this. Oh, could they be in Shanghai? I mean, she got into it, motivated me to find out as much information as possible. So this is kind of my journey on how this all played out. I actually just have a handful of photographs that I'm going to share, kind of, people that like to share family albums, whether you like it or not, I guess you're gonna, people show up with their travel pictures. So that's what we're gonna do today. In short, the story is about my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, who grew up in a small town in northwest India, in Punjab. For the Indians here who probably know, the town was named Ludhiana. It's still there. He happened to be in Vienna in 1938 for a medical procedure, and happened to meet a Jewish couple at that hospital, the Rudolfina Hospital, for those of you that know some of the hospitals in Vienna, and ended up meeting this Jewish couple who were delivering a baby boy, whose wife happens to be here today, Marcia Waxler, and she just flew in. She just flew in from Fort Lauderdale last night and took a lot of pictures of the snow this morning. And so my grandfather ended up, heard the story, didn't know anything, because this whole issue of the Holocaust or anti-Semitism, or even to some extent the Second World War, was not necessarily front of mind for Indians. He didn't know German. He was all alone because he'd left my mom, my grandmother, the entire family in India. There was no internet. There was none of those kinds of things. And so as I started to get into this, by the way, so he ended up devising a scheme to rescue Mr. and Mrs. Waxler and their toddler boy who came to India and stayed with my grandfather in Ludhiana in 1939, and stayed in India till 1947, when they moved to New York and then to LA. So the story is really about, and I did a lot of thinking, because I didn't plan to write the book. I wasn't thinking about all this. I just happened to have a little bit of time on my hands and was doing Google searches. That's all I was trying to do. And I'd heard certain stories. To be honest, I'd heard stories that my grandfather had rescued Jews, and I thought I thought that people need to stop talking about this because they don't, in India, don't understand what because this just couldn't be true. Because I'd see these photographs of Europeans, Caucasians, like this photograph. By the way, my mother is this little girl here. Alex Waxler is sitting right in front of her. And I thought these were probably British because India was colonized by the British at that time. So I figured this was really, I needed to stop my family talking about this story. That's how it really started. And that's when I started getting into it and ended up taking the help of a lot of people. I'd call up randomly people in Jerusalem at the different universities. Ended up calling somebody at the University of Graz in Austria. And this lady, Margaret Franz, was just incredible in helping out and doing all the research and everything. And so we found the story, we found the names, and I called up this number I found on Google in Hollywood, Florida. I didn't even know there was a Hollywood in Florida. This woman with a husky voice picks up the phone, and I'm a little nervous because, I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm really saying. And she had kind of a skeptical voice, though yesterday she tells me she thought somehow I was related to Dr. Sanjay Gupta, which is not true. But anyway, she kind of gave me a little bit of the third degree. Who are you? Why are you calling? What are you trying to sell? Et cetera, et cetera. And then she put me on the phone with her husband, just one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And he starts off and says, yeah, Ludhiana used to be a small town. I've been trying to get more information on Google, and it was just, I had to sit down because I'd been trying to get to the bottom of the story, and to actually have somebody on the other side of the phone acknowledge that this was true was quite an emotional experience. So anyway, back to sharing my family photograph, family album, whether you like it or not. So this is Lucy Waxler, Marcia's mother-in-law, in Vienna. Must be about 16, 17 years old at that time. Really beautiful. Look at those hats, stylish. She was the one delivering a baby boy in the same hospital that my grandfather was. So just to give you a sense, because my son is here and he keeps criticizing, saying, you get confusing in the very beginning. The story is there were 5 Jewish families that my grandfather rescued. I personally talked to 2 out of the 5. So most of my information and what we're going to talk about today is from those 2 families. Primarily, it's the Waxler family because I used to fly down to Fort Lauderdale and spent a lot of time with Alex Waxler. And so a lot of this information is either coming from my family or from the 2 families. So the Waxler family, this is Lucy Waxler in Vienna, but she actually was born and grew up in Berlin. This is a picture of Szkolnik, am I saying that right? That was her father. So she was born Lucy Szkolnik in Berlin. And this is a picture outside his hat shop. Maybe that's why she had all those stylish hats. She got them for free. So this is, I don't know the date on this. This is a picture provided by Mr. Waxler that, I digitized and I kept all of those pictures because I think it's a great story. So anyway, this is kind of how the story started. She moved to to Vienna at some point in time. The details are in the book to the extent you guys want to get into it. I know I'm going to get the hook from my wife soon, so I got to move fast. So she moved from Vienna to from Berlin to Graz. She must be visiting Vienna with her best friend Urgi. I've talked to Urgi's mother, who lives in Israel. No, I'm not talking. I've exchanged multiple emails. She sent me pictures. She sent me information, so I can cross-check her best friend what information Urgi's daughter, who's still alive and lives in Israel, could. But she ended up living in Graz. As you can see, that's Lucy. That's Lucy. That's who became her husband, Mr. Woxler, I guess. There is a story to this motorcycle that I heard from Alex Woxler. He told me it's a great story. So to the extent you guys want to learn about the story, you can get it in the book. Okay, so I'm going to move. This around the same time, my grandfather was taking a boat to Europe. I don't know if you can tell where my grandfather is. This looks like some kind of a fancy dress party on a ship. You can see the freight kind of those pipes. That's my grandfather right here. What was interesting to me is these kids in blackface. I guess that won't work today, would it? This was not the trip that he met these families. He was going to Europe on a business trip in 1928. I don't have photographs of him going when he met with the families in Vienna. So this is the subject. This is a picture I got out of a newspaper cutting that Margaret Franz from the University of Graz sent me. This is the Schefferneck family, who owned a plywood mill in Gedersdorf, and which got, I forget the term in German, where they, you got picked up by you had to kind of forcibly sell the business, and he was allowed to take 2 machines out. So this is a photograph of him moving those 2 machines and trying to get them shipped out of Europe. He had a brother in Australia, which is where he was trying to get these 2 machines shipped, because that's all he was able to get. And it is quite the story about how he got put in jail. His wife had to show up to the police station and supposedly voluntarily sign over the business in exchange for his release. I think that story has been repeated oftentimes during that era. So back to my grandfather in 1931. This is my grandfather. So I was trying to get into his mind. I spent a lot of time talking about, I can't move around. I like to move around, but this is, so I'm going to have to stand here. One of the things that I tried to understand, and I'm thinking myself, today, 2025, if in today's age of cell phones and internet and instant communication, and I'm living in the U.S., and if I happen to be, let's say, on vacation, let's pick some random place, let's say Lisbon, Portugal, and I'm walking, and somebody comes up to me and says, "Help me, because my government's trying to kill me," how would I react today, right? Would I say things like, "I don't know, I'm a foreigner, let me think about it"? What would I do? So here's my grandfather in 1938 in a hospital, all alone, knowing no German. What goes through his mind? So I spent some time trying to understand him, because he passed away when I was very young. So I needed to understand. And so he was the first person in his family to go to college. By the way, he met my other grandfather, who was also the first person in his family to go to college, which is how my parents got married, I guess. So this is my grandfather, this is my grandmother, this is my great-grandmother, this is my aunt who passed away a few years ago at 102 and was the source of a lot of information around this. And this is the British governor of Punjab at that time. How did he convince him? This is the inauguration of one factory of his. By the way, this is still part of our family house. This wall, I think, still exists. And this, I just took a picture. This is a brick. There's his initials, if you can see, KL. He wasn't happy with the quality of bricks he was getting. And so he said, I'm just going to make my own bricks. So I was trying to get into understanding what goes through, what made him do what he did, laying sick in a hospital in a country. And at that time, India was colonized. Here's a brown man in at that time, fascist Greater Germany. And what was he thinking? So the fact that he would say, I don't like the quality of the bricks. He was a take charge, kind of action-oriented, get things done, quick to make decisions, didn't consult with anybody, kind of did things on his own. So how did he convince, in a colonial environment, the governor to show up for an inauguration of some tiny factory in some tiny village? Probably required a fair amount of gumption. So anyway, moving on. So these families come in 1939. The first person was who came, ended up staying in my grandfather's house. What a disaster, right? Now you think about Vienna, right? In the waning years of the Habsburg Empire, you have schnitzel and, I don't know about you. We were in Vienna a few years ago. I had schnitzel, never again. The idea of beaten veal fried in lard didn't appeal. But our family was complete vegetarian, right? There's no opera. There's none of these. Imagine coming and living there. So he didn't last long. He was there 2-3 months and hightailed it. And my grandfather figured this out and said, so he ended up building these 2 homes. There's 2 homes here. I've walked through them 2-3 years ago because he said, you need to have your own kitchen. You need to do whatever. These homes were literally 25 steps from his house, our house. And so he made sure that they stayed separately. And these 2 homes, one where the Voxler family lived and the other one where the Shefranek family lived. And they lived with him for about 2 years, 1939 to 1941, give or take. So this is Alfred Voxler, Bruno Shefranek, Siegfried Shefranek, Alfred Shefranek. That's my uncle who's no longer alive. That's my grandfather. This guy was the Chief Justice of Punjab. Again, I don't know how. This wall and everything still exists, still there. Each and every brick has my grandfather's initials on it. Again, same thing. This is my mom, Lucy Voxler. Different members of the family. So these were pictures taken, and as you can see, they're all wearing Indian dresses. I don't think they owned any of them. I talked to my aunt, who was the oldest and had the best memory of these people. She said they used to borrow those saris from my aunt, my grandmother, etc., just for getting photographs taken. So I thought it was a pretty cool thing. And I remember sitting on this around here and playing as a kid with my cousins. And and the house is still there. So these people, he was there in 1938. He was quite sick. He showed back up. And while there, he's trying to get these families out. He came back to India, trying to get these families out. And for those of you that have some sense on Indian history, that was also the time of the entire movement to get the British out of India. And he got involved in that too. So I just had these pictures of 1939. And I'm thinking, here's a man who's sick, who's trying to build these homes for these Jewish families. He's got a business to run. He's calling these British officials to come inaugurate this business or that business and stuff like that. And he hosted one of the most seminal moments in Indian independence history at his house. If you Google the Ludhiana sessions of the Indian National Congress, that was at our house. This is at our house. This, for those of you know, this is Nehru, the first prime minister, who was very good friends with my grandfather. This is my grandfather, okay? This is in our house. He's having breakfast. This is Nehru. This is my grandfather. This is my aunt, my mom's oldest sister. And this is, my wife has to remind me these names. I can't remember. Who is this? I don't know, whatever. She was a Quaker British, very confidant of Gandhi. And so how was he doing all these things? Just to me, again, I'm trying to get to understand my own family and my own grandfather, where he's trying to juggle all these things. That's just how he was. He juggled all these things all the time. Right, so 2 years later, the British come to our house and arrest all these people and say, you're German. We're fighting Germany. And not that much different than what was going on here, right? When we interned the Japanese, they were put in an internment camp in India. That's Mrs. Woxler. This is Alex Woxler. That's the camp. And the British made no distinction between Nazis and Jews. And if you've read the history, in around 1941, maybe even into 1942, the prevailing opinion was that the Nazis may actually win the Second World War. And so the commandant of this camp actually favored the Nazis, saying, if they win, I better be on the good side. And so here's the situation. India is one of the very few countries in the world that has not had an anti-Semitic incident. And Jews have lived there for over 1,000 years and have had a disproportionately large positive impact on Indian society. Some of the most well-known business families or Jewish families in India. So it wasn't Indians that were persecuting Jews. This was the British colonizers that were putting Jews and Nazis side by side in the same camp. So 2 years later, as I said, they ended up, this is one of the rooms in that camp, the internment camp, and they spent, I don't know, maybe 4 years, 5 years, almost till the end of the Second World War in this camp. The Shefranek family, the Woxler family, the other families spent many years. And it was only when the U.S. came in after Pearl Harbor and the tide started to turn that actually the treatment started to improve vis-a-vis the Nazis that they were sharing space with. I didn't know that. I don't know how many people knew that there were internment camps in India. Amazing. Now, however, here's the interesting part. Purandar is a beautiful, what in India are called hill stations. You know, these are resort towns. When it gets way too hot, that's where you go to. And so here's the weird part of this whole thing, right? So they're in internment camps because they are the enemy. They're Germans. They're Nazis, all of them. And, but they're white. So they still are above Indians in stature. So even though it's an internment camp, it's in a nice, beautiful resort town. Talk about the contradictions, right? So anyway, after they got out, they made their way to Karachi, which is now Pakistan. Mr. Wachsler bought his first car there. They had a second baby. Beautiful house, you know. That's Alex Wachsler playing Robin Hood or with the neighbor's kid. He said he remembered his name. He said his dad was a doctor, a Muslim doctor. This is in their backyard. I've heard this from Alex Wachsler. This was the best time of their life. They were free. There was no anti-Semitism in India. There was a synagogue that they became part of the community. They were white Europeans, so they had all these Indian servants that they even had a young Indian boy as a companion. Didn't know his name. Nobody called him by his real name. I asked Alex, and his memory was fabulous. Yeah, we used to call him Chotu, which means boy. So they quickly assimilated into the European community, making good money, were really, really, really happy. I think till maybe the day Mr. Wachsler passed away last July, I don't think he was ever happy coming to the U.S. Because they were at the, status-wise, money-wise, this was the best time they had. Right? But 1947, so this is New York Times, May 30th, 1948, right? So India got partitioned into Pakistan and India. Israel got created. Pakistan was mostly Muslim. Can you see this? The headline there? And so for the Wachsler family, this was deja vu. They had seen this in Austria. And much as they loved living there, they really didn't want to leave. They knew they had to get out. Same thing with the Shefranek family. They knew they had to get out. So in 1948, the Shefranek family ended up moving to Australia. And the Wachsler family ended up moving to New York. Mr. Wachsler couldn't find a job. It was hard, so they moved to LA, but never could recreate this kind of lifestyle. Never did. From being a woman of leisure with servants setting up fancy dinners with plates set right, etc., all those kinds of things. Sending Alex Wachsler to an elite boarding school. She ended up taking a job as a seamstress in LA. And they never did reconcile themselves. Okay, So this is Tel Aviv. This is Lucy Woxler. I'm speculating sometime in the 1970s. And that's her best friend, Urji. If you remember the first photograph I showed you, she had gone to visit her best friend, Urji, in Tel Aviv. And what happened to young Alex Woxler? Boy, he's a handsome man. Right? Marcia, this is him as a student, you think? So he went to UCLA, USC, Columbia, became a professor. Anyway, and then ended up in Florida, which is when I connected with them. So in 2016, we visited, my wife and I. That's Alex Woxler. This is Marcia, who's going to come on stage soon. That's my wife. This is at the Margaritaville Hotel, which Marcia said, it's a new hotel, you should go stay there. Beautiful hotel, except you really have to like Jimmy Buffett. Because they have Jimmy Buffett on continuous loop in the lobby. 24/7, that's all you heard, was Jimmy Buffett. And from 2016, we visited them every year. We'd go down, we had friends in Naples. From Naples, we'd take the drive up to Fort Lauderdale, and I have no idea. I still can't explain it. I felt a connection. And I think it was mostly because of Alex. I think that's the kind of person he was. So anyway, I'm now from family pictures, I'm on to vacation photos. So in 22, we went to Vienna and stayed at the Imperial Hotel. I'm into vacation pictures. You thought I'm joking, right? That's my wife, a beautiful hotel. And we went to the Jewish memorial in Vienna. I know this is hard to see, but you see all these Shefreneks that died, the Woxlers that couldn't make it. And I talked with Elizabeth Shefrenek in Perth. She said that her father spent a lot of time with my grandfather in Ludhiana, India, trying to figure out how to get his brothers and sisters and others out. And I don't think anybody else made it, because I would know who else had made it to Ludhiana, except for his one brother, Siegfried. Amazingly enough, his wife, Siegfried Shefrenek's wife, said, I'm not moving. She stayed back in Vienna. Not sure why. I'm going to presume she couldn't imagine the idea of leaving Vienna. And she was not Jewish. She was Christian. She thought maybe she'd get away. Little did she know. After all the Jews, they started going after people that were married to Jews, right? So anyway, so that was quite an emotional moment for my wife and me when we went and saw the names of at least the same last names of people that we actually knew. So I think most of you know what that is, right? Names of Jewish families outside the door where they lived before they were taken away. The reason I put this is I don't know how many of you know Indian history, and that there were about 3 million Indians that were killed in a matter of weeks in 1947 in what was called the partition, right? These were mobs living no different than what was going on in Europe just a few years earlier. Neighbors, a Hindu and a Muslim, living next to each other for generations, now looking to kill each other. 3 million people in a matter of weeks. Okay, and most of this happened in Punjab, which is where my family lived, both my mom and my dad. So this was ground central for us. My mom's 91, she still has this visceral hatred, illogical hatred of Muslims, right? And part of the reason is this did not happen. There was no catharsis. There's been no reconciliation between Indians and Pakistanis, between Hindus and Muslims. So there was no Truth and Reconciliation Commission like what happened in South Africa, right? That Bishop Desmond Tutu initiated after the apartheid government fell. India has never seen any of these. I think India could learn a lot of lessons with how some of these things happened. I see that today in my mother, 75 years later, because there's never been that catharsis. And so I was very, impressed with the wrong. I was emotional about, because I see this as my mother today. It's not good for her. She's 91. So anyway, yeah, no, I was joking. This was a vacation, but I felt, and it was important to talk about how India mishandled the same thing till today. So this was the hospital where the young Wachsler couple met my grandfather. I obviously didn't go. It's a hospital, but I felt the need to at least take a picture. It was quite an interesting half day in Vienna, because those of you that may know, most of the cab drivers in Vienna are Turkish, right? And so they're really all interested in trying to sell you. I can take you here, I can take you there, I can take you to this cool spot. And I said, no, I want to go to this hospital, and and then I said, but I need to go to this other spot. This was where the Wachsler family's last residence in Austria before they made it to India. It's not the same building, because it was built in 1959. Probably the original building must have been destroyed in the bombings, and there's a Irish pub there now. That Turkish cab driver was taking photographs, but I still felt the need to go to that address. And then, right behind the Imperial Hotel that we stayed at, in the most elegant part of a very elegant Vienna, was whoops. I don't know if I can go back now. Is it possible for you to put that back, please? So that is the residence of the Scheffernek family before they left Austria for good. Elegant, must have been one of the most expensive parts of Vienna, just to show you how the Scheffernek family, was part of the high society of Vienna. Both them and the Wachslers used to go to the opera all the time, and what all they lost when they had to get out of Austria, thanks to my grandfather. And one other story, real quick. I think this is the last slide, and then I'm going to yield. Is that while my grandfather met the Wachsler couple at the hospital, so I asked. No, I didn't ask. So I was doing research in the Indian National Archives, and this nobody had told me. So, and I'm Googling, and I'm just kind of doing searches, and up pops this application by the Scheffernek family to get residency and then citizenship in Australia. And in there was a question, how did you make it to India? Where are you? All those kinds of questions that come up in any typical application. And he said he met a Mr. Kundanlal, my grandfather, when he responded to a job advertisement in Vienna. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So not only did my grandfather help the Voxlers, he actually then started taking out job ads in a German language newspaper that he did, and he didn't know German. So he was not passive. I mean, he actually had this crazy, audacious idea, and the other 4 families responded to job ads. Just amazing, right? Because if you got a job, because you couldn't leave Greater Germany till you had a visa to go somewhere. No country was taken Jewish refugees. Britain certainly was, or British India certainly was not. So he was contriving to some extent. Some were real. I don't want to think that this was, he was also interested in making money. So you could also say there was some level of technology transfer that was happening. And I just want to make sure this was not him just being completely altruistic about it, though it doesn't take away from the fact that he did help all these people. So he was taking out job ads. People were responding, and he was on the spot writing job offers to these people. So much so the police, so the British consulate said, who is this Indian? And by the way, all this information I'm reading in the Indian National Archives that had just been digitized, so I was able to get access to them. Who is this Indian putting out job ads? So they called up India, and they sent a police posse to my grandfather's house. And my, at that time, 16-year-old uncle talked to them. And this is all the interview stuff that's in these files. And obviously, it's my aunt was older, but you have to talk to a male at that time, I suppose, right? It's a pretty male-dominated society. And I don't know what my 16-year-old uncle knew, because my grandfather didn't say anything to anybody. But he said, oh, yeah, certainly. And this is the police guys writing all this and, sending all this information back to London and then to Vienna, and then saying, yeah, he's got all the resources, he's got this, he's got that. And they said, okay, here's another visa stamped. I don't know also, for instance, I wish there was a way to figure out, were there others that responded, got a job, but couldn't make it out? I don't know. I don't know, were there non-Jewish people that responded? Don't know. All I know is these 5 families, and certainly I wish we could get on a time travel machine and find out, were there others that never made it out? Anyway, so this was kind of my family album, vacation pictures. Thank you.
You can sit in the middle.
Okay.
You can sit here. Go ahead. Nope, that's fine. Yeah, you can sit here. Yep, right here. Oh, good, it's on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Schaffner. I'm Senior Education Manager here at the Zuckerman Holocaust Center, and it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome Vinay and Marcia here, and thank you for sharing this story. I think it's an important one that often apparently hasn't been told until recently. So it's my privilege also to welcome Marcia, who came up for her birthday today.
Yeah. Thank you.
To enjoy the beautiful snow that she's missing from Florida. So thank you to both of you for being here this afternoon. Vinay, I'd like to start with asking you, and this is a question after I read the book, and realizing your grandfather goes to Vienna and then invites all of these wonderful people to come and stay with you. What was your grandmother's response to all this? How did she react?
Good question. I don't know. Oh, sorry.
Nope.
You can probably hear me in any case. I don't know, but I have speculated that as I've kind of gone through and tried to understand what motivated my grandfather to do all the things that he did do. And my sense is he probably never asked. I think he was in Europe. There's no telephones. There's no internet. He was a pretty decisive person and pretty dominating. He had a very dominating impact on my family. So my speculation is, he said they'll adjust. Yeah.
I'll remember that when I go home tonight. Try that one, see how that works. No, just kidding. Marcia, you know, obviously, what did Alex share with you about this tremendous story? I mean, what was the impact on his life that you can share with the audience?
Well, you know, he was an infant when he came to India. But as an adult, he loved the Indian culture. He loved food. Every week we had to go to an Indian restaurant. He just loved it. And, but one of the things that it just bothered me. I was born in the United States, and he always was affected by the fact that family members and other people died. Why didn't he die in the Holocaust? It bothered him the rest of his life. And the other thing that bothered him was, why would God just watch and not do anything? And so I used to say to him, we don't have the answers to everything. We don't. But it always bothered him all of his life.
I can only imagine. There's a lot of survivor guilt there, huh? Vinay, you know, your grandfather never spoke publicly about any of this. Why do you think that might be? I know you were kind of asking the question earlier.
Yeah,
probably, but
I think we are complex people, right? So he started a lot of things, and he always put his name on it. But at the same time, he never looked for recognition. He could have been a senior leader of independent India. He certainly knew Nehru, the prime minister. He knew everybody. He never did. I don't think he wanted to move to New Delhi. So I don't think he's the kind of person who cared about recognition. He did something because he believed it was what he wanted to do. And he took in a lot of people. It wasn't just these 5 Jewish families. There was an Indian holy man who stayed with my grandfather for more than 20 years. So there was another kid during partition. There was this 11-year-old kid. He found orphaned, homeless, escaping the partition massacres, took him home, and that kid grew up. He got married, worked with him. That man, boy, whatever, stayed for years and didn't leave till the day my grandfather died. The day he died, that man left. So he just did things. It wasn't just these 5 families. There's story after story we have of him just taking people in.
it just seemed to be kind of his nature, because even in the book, and if you have the fortunate chance to buy a copy today, he talks also even about his own family, that he helped with business, and his father and his brother, and it just seemed like a very selfless individual in a lot of ways, and maybe a little impulsive to bring families home, but that's a good thing. I mean, he just seems to be kind of who he was, huh?
Yeah, and as I said, I don't know how I would have reacted. I mean, I'm being as honest, even today.
Yeah. Well, I want to give our audience a chance to ask some questions as well, because I have about 40, but that's probably not why we're all here too. If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand. We have two, I believe Kennedy and Maya will have a microphone. We want to give the audience a chance to ask a few questions. Do we have anyone that's, oh, looks like Kennedy will be up here just shortly. She's
I'm curious, what kind of illness did your grandfather have, and why did he seek help in Vienna? And how do you survive?
So my grandfather was a severe diabetic, very severe diabetic. This was, to some extent, even pre-insulin. And even when insulin, which was discovered in Canada, India was not the first destination for doses of insulin. And there are many downstream effects that diabetes has. So he had hemorrhoids and piles, and so he had gone and he couldn't get operated because they couldn't get his blood sugar in India, his blood sugar under control. So he had read about a Dr. Singer, who, as most the prominent physicians in Vienna were Jewish, who was running the Rudolfina Hospital, who had he read an article about how he had been able to control blood sugar through diet and other forms. And so I think impulsively he said, I'm going. But it was not life-threatening, but he did go for... Now, interestingly enough, by the time he ended up there, Dr. Singer had already been fired, from the hospital. But he did, fortuitously for the Wachsler family, did get himself operated there.
Looks like we have another one.
Basically, that was my same question. I wondered how the hospital was particularly chosen, but it was through referral, and that's what I'm. Thank you.
Awesome. Looks like we have another one over here.
Thank you. The Indian partition was a momentous and violent affair, but about a year later, do you have any recollection, or does the family have any recollection of the partition which resulted in the Declaration of Independence for Israel?
I don't know how much there was focus in India on events in Europe, by and large. I think they were certainly in what is now Pakistan, as I showed in that New York Times article, certain level of anger at what was going on in Palestine. But my family never really talked about it. That was never a topic.
Come on.
I'm going to stand up. Is that all right?
Yeah, you can certainly stand.
Yes, there was a unique, extraordinary hospital. I believe it was in Berlin. For a minute, I thought it was Vienna, but thinking further, where the Jewish staff were tolerated by the Nazis. Do you have any cognizance of that?
I don't. What I have been told, I have not been able to verify the story. This is told by my aunt, that when he went into the Rudolph Hospital, without Dr. Singer there, they couldn't get his blood sugar under control. And after a while, some of the staff surreptitiously brought Dr. Singer in to work with my grandfather. So at the end of the day, a lot of the knowledge existed in people that they were trying to.
That's interesting. It became a refuge there in Berlin for them to tolerate that.
So there was also. Yeah, there was also a story where after the operation, my grandfather went into a sanatorium, which is pretty standard, and most of the sanatoriums in and around Vienna were Jewish-owned, and a lot of the people there were perfectly fine, were not sick, were not recuperating, they were just hiding. And he actually met another Jewish man, and it's a riveting story, which I read again in the Indian National Archives, about how this one gentleman was hiding out in the sanatorium.
Thank you very much.
Looks like we have one here, and then, oh, Maya, do you have one?
I'm struggling trying to understand how, like Jews in Germany and Austria in the late 1930s were able to get out. I thought they were trying to get out, and they couldn't, did your grandfather just legally take them out of Austria, or did they sneak out?
No, they left legally because they were able to get a job offer from my grandfather, which allowed them to get a visa for India. And if you had a visa and there was other criteria, you could legally get out of Austria.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there something in the Hindu religion which encourages rescue or helping the stranger?
I think there is something in pretty much every religion. It's about how you interpret it and how well you follow it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vinay, for coming. One thing about India, you probably know because I spent in Ludhiana. We still have family in Ludhiana. You know, what some of the Christian missionary, like in Ambala, where I worked 5 years, Philadelphia churches opened a hospital, 1887 by Dr. Carlton. So we were very much attached with the Christian Medical College in Ludhiana. So they were very well connected. My boss he was a thoracic surgeon, Christian. He went back to that hospital and worked in the Philadelphia Mission Hospital. He's still there in Ambala. So Ambala, Ludhiana was a big town at that time. All the Christian Medical College, Vellore, if you know, the two hospitals and the medical college. So this is really a great story. Yeah.
I was born in Christian Medical College in Ludhiana.
I love it. I think we have time for maybe two more.
Namaste, Vinayji. My question is, we saw pictures of your grandfather with Nehru, and that certainly says how involved he must have been, even with the Indian Congress and, you know, the politics at that time. So do you have any more insights on what his contribution was to the freedom struggle, or was he involved in any way there?
So as I had brought up this photograph, if you understand Indian history, you know, the British, and I'm not trying to put opinions of my opinion, I'm trying to be as factual, had this policy of divide and rule, as you know, which they implemented super successfully across the globe, starting in the 1700s. At that time, the story was, the British would say, well, we don't know how we can give you independence because it's all these kings and princes that rule. So in 1939, at my grandfather's house, the Congress Party adopted a declaration in what's called the Ludhiana Sessions, basically saying that the British government was not going to could not negotiate with the kings in India. They needed to negotiate with the ordinary citizenry, which was a big deal because the kings did not want independence. That's how they got their power. Anyway, but back to the question you're asking, my grandfather also was very close friends with the head of the RSS at that time. And for those of you that don't understand, that's it's a paramilitary, kind of a paramilitary organization, very, very fascist Hindu undertones to it. So he was not, he made friends with anybody and everybody that was interested in Indian independence. And he provided them money, resources, a place to stay. He hosted one of the most seminal conferences, but that was his contribution, because he was not interested in a defined role, and which is why he never became a leader of Free India. He didn't want to.
Maya will take one more, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is from the Hindu scriptures that are thousands of years old. That idea that Nissim Rubin from AJC once quoted this, and the guest is God in a Hindu family, and so India treated Jews with the respect that they deserved, just like your grandfather, I think, as a nation, I would say. But I did want to share with you something for your mother. her emotion, I've seen many partition survivors being able to tell their stories helps them. And there's an organization called ISPAD. If anyone here knows a Hindu who seems irrational about it, recommend that they connect with the Indian Subcontinent Partition Project. They have been doing their best to document stories. We don't have the funding because many of us don't know our own history of what happened during partition. And so helping people like your mom tell their stories is really important for reconciliation. Thank you. You can find them on Facebook and on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinay and Marcia. We all appreciate you for coming and joining us today and sharing your story. It's an important one that I think not a lot of us certainly didn't know before today, and it certainly is an inspiration that we can all be better. We are especially grateful to our community partners, AJC Detroit, and we're so honored for Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Paul to join us here from the Consul in Chicago. A special thank you also to our generous program supporters, PNC Foundation, Robin and Leo Eisenberg, Stephen Glickman, Lynn Kalish, Sharon Maskin, Fran and Mark Newman, Nancy and Smith Chamey family, Sarah Geyer and Scott Strauss, Jack Weissman of blessed memory, and Adela Weissman. I also want to thank our museum members and donors that are here with us as well today. It's because of your support here we're able to have such amazing programs with Vinay. To learn more about membership, please, you can check us out at the front desk. Vinay will be in the lobby area in our first gallery signing books. If you would like a copy of his book, it is for sale and purchased today at the Doric and Eric Billis Museum Shop. And then he will be right there to sign your books for you. We will have team members there to kind of assist with that. And we invite you now to join us for reception in the lobby. Thanks again for joining us today. It was our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.